It's time for the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show.
Presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut Brewing Company on 101 ESPN.
Extended post-game coverage, the fourth period here in your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. A 7-3 loss as the Blues lose to Chicago tonight. Two of their losses, they have been outscored 15-6. Just a brutal performance tonight for St. Louis. And, you know, I've been texting back and forth with a couple of different people, and to me, this is the worst loss of the season for the Blues. And I've got evidence to back it up, at least. I know they've had some ugly losses, and I think a lot of the pushback I've received was the Colorado Avalanche being the worst loss. Sure, I get it. They scored 4 goals in the first 5 minutes. That team has Hall of Famers from top to bottom. That outcome was expected. A lot of the other losses this season, outcomes may have been expected. Now, some of the coughing up goals when you were up 6-4 against Detroit, that was a pretty bad one. Philadelphia, that was a pretty bad one. Multiple times, Vancouver, even the Seattle Kraken one, although I still think that was goalie interference. This one, in my opinion, takes the cake. I mean, you had 3 days off. You had 2 full days of practice, and Deeks, you were at practice. You were texting me. That was a heavy practice that they did a couple of days ago. They were working on 6-on-5. They were working on 3-on-3. They were skating. They were doing battle drills. You had 3 days off. You won back-to-back games. You had another opportunity to get your 3rd consecutive win, 4th time this season. And you go into Chicago, a team that you just recently beat, a team that, yes, they had won 3 in a row, but also a team that in the last month had allowed the 6th most goals in the National Hockey League and scored the 2nd fewest goals in the National Hockey League in the last month. And you lost 7-3. And they also were without Bedard and Nazar. There's no excuses for this one. You didn't show up again, and you let a team that on paper looked worse, you let that team wipe you away in the second period and never pulled yourself back in. So with that being said, let's jump right into it with our Ted Drew's 3 takeaways.
It's time for tonight's 3 takeaways, presented by Ted Drew's Frozen Custard, a St. Louis tradition for over 95 years. Unmatched quality, unforgettable taste.
Look, first takeaway to me is special teams. I mean, the fact that you go 0 for 5, including about 45 seconds of 5-on-3, and in those 5 power play opportunities, you had a total of 6 shots on goal. To put that into comparison, Chicago goes 3 for 4, and the one that they got negated was the end of a 5-on-3 because Tyler Bertuzzi abused an official verbally. And so he got a 10-minute penalty, which means the power play was negated. But for how they played on the penalty kill, I kind of expected them to score. But you had 6 shots on 5 power plays. 5 of them came in the first period, and the first period was where you had 3 power play chances. In the second period, you had 2. Second to third, you had 2, and 1 shot on goal. Chicago had 4 power plays, really 3, and had 10 shots on goal and scored 3 goals. Your penalty kill, your power play, and your penalty kill had been playing better, which that's a little bit surprising to me. But the power play, man, you just don't have the dudes to score. You know, it's such a predictable power play that teams know it's going to the bumper spot to take the shot. They take that away, and then there's nothing else for the Blues while they try and generate. I thought it was very interesting, too, towards the end of that game, where they started the second unit, and they put Broberg as the sole defenseman on the power play. That, to me, was Jim Montgomery, 1, saying, look, our guys aren't doing it, so you might as well change it up. And 2, you start to see the transition of power to where maybe you start to see Broberg more on the power play to get him experience on being the quarterback from that one. But special teams lets you down tonight. Second takeaway, your goaltending lets you down tonight. Totally honest with this one because I know people see me as the Binnington honk. Some of the goals, he had no chance on. The goal that made it 4-2, 5-2, there was absolutely no chance. The Burakovsky power play goal, absolutely no chance. The Crevier goal, that one wasn't as pretty. But the two goals that were untimely goals for your goaltender was the Oliver Moore power play goal and the Connor Murphy goal. The Connor Murphy goal was probably the biggest one. I mean, that's goals that Binnington saves. And he didn't tonight. So although I can also look at this and say, man, your defense played porous in front of him, I also have to look at Binnington and say you didn't make the saves that you normally make. That game against Montreal, he was making those saves. This game, when it was a tight hockey game, and credit to Stenberg, he pulled you back into it by making it 2-2 after that Oliver Moore power play goal. But that Connor Murphy one, that one kind of wiped away the rest of the outcome of that game, because from the moment that Connor Murphy goal went in, which, by the way, that's another guy who has scored his first goal of the season. I think my ongoing tally with that right now is now 19 players that have scored their first goal of the season against the Blues. But that made it 3-2. And that moment, the Blackhawks just continued to pound the Blues down. They would go on to score 4 unanswered goals after that Murphy goal went in. They'd go on to outshoot the Blues 25-17. That was the moment that it felt like the Blues weren't getting back into it. Third takeaway, your best players. You needed your best players tonight. Chicago didn't have their best players. And what did they do? They went out there and they had a guy score his second goal of the season, his first goal of the season, third goal of the season, fourth goal of the season, fifth goal of the season. Their role players stepped up when their best players weren't there. The Blues role players showed up tonight. Tucker, Stenberg, Walker. Now, I'm not going to shoot them down wholly because Jordan Kyrou got robbed twice. Hit the post. Huge save by Spencer Knight. Pavel Buchnevich, 7 shot attempts, 4 on goal. Also wasn't a minus in this game. And Jimmy Snuggerud had 10 shot attempts on net and 4 on net. But with that being said, you only had 1 shot on goal from Jake Neighbors. And you had Robert Thomas, who had 2 shot attempts, 1 on goal that came in the final 5 minutes of the hockey game. And also won 31% of the faceoffs. Your best players didn't show up. That was the other thing for me. The Blackhawks came into this game as the second worst faceoff team in the National Hockey League, and the Blues lost 61% of the faceoffs tonight. Just an all-around bad game for the Blues. And this one, again, to me, might be the worst one of the season. It might be the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of what the Blues decide to do with their roster, because having 3 days off with 2 full practices, plenty of rest, winning back-to-back games at home, feeling good about yourself, and then you go out there and you have this outcome against the Blackhawks. To me, that one doesn't look good at all for St. Louis. So with that being said, let's get to our soundbite of the night.
The soundbite of the night is presented by Rocket Convenience Stores. Fuel your car and your daily cravings at Rocket Convenience Stores.
I don't really have anything that sticks out to you from this game, but what I do think carries over from my third takeaway and your best players not being your best players. This was Doug Armstrong last week when he was on with Curbs and Joey on the broadcast when they asked about the top players in the second half.
You know, obviously they haven't had, as a group, the start that they had hoped to have or we needed them to have to be competitive. It's a top player-run league, and our guys, just for whatever reason, as a unit, haven't produced to the level that we thought they would or expect them to, and I'm sure they'd say the same thing about their own play.
Top player-run league, and your top players have not lived up to it. That's where this team is at. That's where this team is at right now as they get blown out by the Chicago Blackhawks after 3 days off, starting off, in my opinion, a pretty important road trip when you were taking on one team that sat below you a point and then another team that is a couple of points ahead of you You let the one game slip away. Now the other team, the Utah Mammoth, are 5 points ahead of you with the matchup on Friday. So disappointing one for St. Louis. Let's do this. Let's take a break, come back, see if we can get a little audio from Jim Montgomery. If not, we'll play a snippet of Jim Montgomery from earlier today, and we'll have our final look as the Blues fall to the Blackhawks tonight, 7-3. Alex Ferrario with you. This is St. Louis Blues hockey. Alex Ferrario back with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care, a company that's been around since 1926, a company that has been taking care of my home since 2016. And I love what they do. I'm part of the maintenance agreement. Twice a year they come out, they fix the unit, check it, make sure it's good to go. But also I get priority scheduling when things pop up. But I also love the fact that the knowledge of the technicians that come out. A couple of the guys, Justin's the one that comes to my house an awful lot, 30 years in this business. So he knows what he's talking about. He gives me actual breakdown of what's going on and how to maintain an older unit if you have one. But they're also there to remind you about the filter changes. Because, man, if you're like me in the past, you forget about it. And you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't do that. 4 months later, it's all nasty, and it's part of the reason why your unit's acting up. So if you check out Classic Air Care, they've got a filter program, which I think is really cool. If you subscribe to it, they send you a filter to your front porch every month, and it's that reminder that says, go change your furnace filter. So use them today. I promise you won't be disappointed with the customer service. It's incredible, the technicians and what they provide. It's Classic Air Care. You could schedule online. Just do me a favor and tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
Welcome back to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show.
Presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut Brewing Company on 101 ESPN.
back into our fourth period. Extended postgame coverage here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN as the Blues fall to the Chicago Blackhawks tonight, 7-3. I just saw this from Hockey Stat Cards that tweeted it out. The Blackhawks had two players in the game this evening that had the highest rating of an individual game of their season. It was Matt Grzelcyk and Connor Murphy, two defensemen that had the highest rating of their games so far this season. And I actually think Hockey Stat Cards had one like that a few games ago, that there were like five players on the ice that had the best single game performance of their season against the Blues. So an ugly one out in Chicago. We don't have any audio from Jim Montgomery. The Blues haven't sent anything over yet. So go back to earlier today, actually a couple of days ago, when Jim Montgomery was asked what his team was doing better. And this was his answer as we hear a little from Jim Montgomery.
It's time to hear from the head coach, Jim Montgomery, presented by Fisher Window and Door Store, offering quality American-made Marvin windows and doors. Visit their showrooms in Brentwood or East Alton, Illinois.
No, we're defending. It's starting to look to the eye, and when you watch it on video and you watch, our players are automatically going in the spots that they should be going. I think we can get better at it, but it's vastly improved.
So that was Jim Montgomery from a couple of days ago, and you're probably wondering, why in the hell would you play that, Alex? Well, first of all, they didn't send us any audio, so we couldn't play the Montgomery postgame. But second, it kind of ties into my thoughts with our final look as we wrap up our postgame show this evening.
It's time to take a look back at tonight's game with the final look.
Driven by Pure Performance. Only stop for all your aftermarket vehicle needs.
This has been the problem all season. It's whack-a-mole. It's inconsistent. It's one game, they look great. Two games, you got some of the best games that you have seen of the season for individual players, like Robert Thomas against Montreal, Jordan Binnington against Montreal. I thought Stenberg and Berggren and Dvorsky looked like one of the best lines against Vegas. Buchnevich, Shannon Snuggerud continuing to build. And then this happens. It's the Jekyll and Hyde of this Blues team, and it's the frustrating part that there's just no answers for. If there were answers for it, the problem would be solved, but you have not had consistency for 3 straight games from anybody in the roster. And you can't win that way. You don't have guys that go out there and take the game over, especially in this one tonight where it was a lacking Blackhawks offense, a lacking Blackhawks roster without 2 of their best players, and special teams. The penalty kill had been excellent recently. They give up 3 power play goals. Your power play continues to struggle. Gets 6 shots on 5 opportunities. Your offense did a great job in 2 games of getting to the front of the net. Lacked that tonight. Your top players, you had one of your top 6 have 2 shot attempts in a hockey game. It's way too inconsistent. I think people know that by now. I sound like a broken record on these post games, but this one, in my opinion, this one might take the cake for the ugliest loss of the season for the Blues because of the lack of skill on the Blackhawks roster on paper. I'm not trying to take away from what they did tonight. They played a great game, but you had no Bedard, no Nazar. That's on paper, not a dangerous team compared to what you have gone up against this season. It's a team that scored the 6th fewest, or allowed the 6th most goals in the National Hockey League in the last month, and they have scored the 2nd fewest goals in the National Hockey League in the last month, and you lost 7-3. Not a good performance. I would imagine Jim Montgomery wasn't pleased with it either. Nothing really to take away in this one. But the Blues, you have to turn the page. Nothing you could do about it. Yes, it sucks. Yes, it's ugly. We've seen bad games by your goaltender, bad games by the roster, and they follow it up with a great game. Could do that against Utah on Friday. Assumption would be Joe Hofer gets that start. Could also lay an egg in that one. But that's been the inconsistencies and the unknown of this Blues roster all season. Next up, they get that Utah Mammoth hockey team. It'll be on Friday night to start a back-to-back on the road. Friday in Utah, Saturday in Vegas. 8 o'clock puck drop on Friday, which means we've got a pregame skate beginning at 7:30 and the First Community Credit Union pregame show starting at 7 o'clock right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. Huge shout-out to our phenomenal producer, Jordan Deacon. Once again, I'm Alex Ferrari. Ferrario. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening. Blues fall to the Blackhawks tonight, 7-3. We'll talk tomorrow. Really, I'll talk to you in about 11 hours for BK and Ferrario right here in your home for the Blues 101 ESPN.
Thanks for listening to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show.
Presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut Brewing Company on 101 ESPN.